Welcome to the Kingsford Flivver Flash. I'm Coach Van Dusen. This is season 23, episode 5, a Flivver flashback with Mr. C. All right. Thanks, Tom, for coming on the show this morning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Hey, so just tell our listeners who you are, where you grew up, and kind of your journey through Flivver football.
Well, my name's Tom Christesen. I grew up in this area about 10 miles out of town. I went to Kingsford schools my whole life, starting out at Garden Village, which is no longer there, through the old middle school, through high school. I played football at Kingsford and enjoyed it a lot every year that I played. And now I work at the middle school. I teach 7th grade social studies here. So
right down the hall from me. So
yeah,
it's fun. I get to see every day.
Yeah.
When you were in high school, what other things did you do, growing up in Kingsford?
Growing up in Kingsford, well, I grew up kind of in the country, and that was a while ago, so not much as far as cable television or anything like that. So basically, my whole every day was just outside, doing stuff outside, enjoying myself. I lived in the woods, so anything involved with that, that's what was about 90% of my childhood, I suppose. Doing stuff with my friends every chance I got. I had a large group of friends, which I still have to this day. I enjoyed sports too. I always enjoyed sports, played various things like most kids did back in the day. I also ran track in high school for a couple of years. I enjoyed that. Not enough to stick with it all 4 years, but so those were my main things, but mostly football. So
okay, what were you listening to in high school? What was your jam?
Oh God, I have always liked pretty much everything. I like a lot of older music. So for somebody my age, when I say older music, that would be stuff from the 50s and 60s. So I liked all that kind of stuff. But as far as anything modern, your usual stuff, obviously AC/DC, Metallica. I loved early rap too. I was into Beastie Boys when I was in middle school. And
Nice.
Run DMC, I liked all that stuff. And then of course, by the time I got to high school, would have been like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and any of that. And of course, your whole assortment of hair bands.
And I only bring that up because every morning you're jamming out in your classroom, and it's all good stuff. 80s and 90s, some 70s stuff working there.
I love music. I've always loved music. So
that's awesome. So talk to us a little bit about Tom as a football player coming in through. Did you play all 4 years? What positions did you play? Kind of walk us through that.
I didn't play all 4 years, but I played. I was always wound up being a tailback and linebacker is what I played. But have to have kind of a disclaimer here. If anybody's tuning in, I'm expecting to hear exploits of the greatest football player that Kingsford ever had. You're on the wrong channel. But I love playing. I had a great. I was fortunate to play for my class had tons of talent, which of course pushed me further down the depth chart. I had 2 guys that were very good friends of mine, but they were Scott Rudd and Joe Dumas. I don't know if you know those 2.
I know the names.
All right. And they were just really big, strong athletes. And if you know them today, that's what they looked like in high school too. They were just like, really big guys and really good athletes, nice guys, great guys. But I just loved playing, and that was one of the sports we always played on the playground. And a group of my friends and I, almost every day, that's what we did. So that kind of continued on into freshman year. And I always thought about playing tight end. I got to be honest with you. I always liked the position of tight end, which I know you'll like, being a line guy. So kind of a hybrid lineman sort of thing. But when I got to school, you quickly realize that if you really want, this is back now, like it would have been like 1989, my freshman year. So you quickly realize, if I'm going to be on offense and I'm going to be some sort of, I'm not going to be a lineman. You kind of want to touch the ball. You kind of want to run the ball or have the ball. Freshman year at 1989, not a lot of passing. Okay. So I gravitated quickly to tailbacks. I'm thinking, man, if I'm going to play, I want to get the ball, So I gravitated towards tailback, and which was the right thing to do. And the coaches to this day, they have a great way of, okay, you might say this is what you want to do, but that's not really what you might think you're this, but you're probably that. And they steered me towards tailback, which was the right position for me, And of course, linebacker, I love playing linebacker. That was fun. Trying to read where the ball is going and all those sorts of things. And, calling the defense when you're out there sort of thing makes you feel like you're in charge, kind of a thing. And you're always kind of, trying to be around the ball as on the defensive side. It's almost like it's the tailback of the defensive position, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. So I love both those positions a lot. So like, I guess that's, and then that's what I played every year when I played. And like I say, I was fortunate to be on really good teams. My freshman year, I believe we only lost one game, but we won. It was the ABC conference then. And we won ABC conference. The next year we were undefeated as JVs. And I believe that was the first year we went to GNC. And then of course we won the year after that. That when I was a junior, we actually went to the Silverdome. We were in the state finals. So that was an experience to be. And then as a junior, the group ahead of us, those seniors were phenomenal too. That was another great batch of athletes. So I was very fortunate to be able to play with on some teams that were just phenomenal, and great coaching obviously too. So
that's awesome. And I like you prefaced it with, this is not the podcast for the greatest football player to ever come through Kingsford.
No, I loved it, but no, they're not hanging my jersey up in Famers anytime soon.
Right. But the reason I like you brought that up is it really doesn't matter, because you're on the team, you're a Flivver. I remember talking to some of my teammates, and I didn't play much. I played one side of the ball my senior year, but talking to some of my teammates later, and it doesn't matter, because you all went through 2-a-days together. You all went on the long bus rides together. You all did all of these things together. And at the end of the day, who scored the touchdown? Nobody really remembers. They just remember the core group of people that were there at that time. And you were a part of that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. You're talking about touchdowns. I have exactly one touchdown in my life. So that was my JV year. So, but that didn't take away from my enjoyment of it or what I got out of it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I knew going in that wasn't going to be my main goal. It was just that large group of your friends, and then making new friends, and playing with them,
exactly,
and meeting new people every year. And, I know a lot of sports claim to be the ultimate team sport, but I'm definitely biased towards football, definitely the ultimate team sport, everybody doing their job. Otherwise it's just not going to work. So,
right. And whenever you go through something that's really hard, like a struggle with a group of people, you become close naturally, right? Whether that's a football team, I would argue too, football is kind of the ultimate team sport, but I know you get the same type of deal in the Army, on a hockey team. Those are all very similar.
Yeah. Very good comparisons. Yeah.
Kind of leading out of your high school years, talk to us how playing football at Kingsford really helped you as you went to college, got a job, and where you are now. Like, what kind of lessons learned did you get from playing football?
Well, lots of lessons. I mean, first of all, I mean, your basic thing about responsibility as far as that the teamwork goes. I mean, you have a job, you have to do it because other people are counting on you. So you learn an added sense of responsibility. Not that I or my teammates weren't responsible before, but it's this added portion of being responsible and being prepared. I mean, you have to be prepared. I mean, you have to know the plays. Just like going into college, you have to be prepared for a test. Coming into work, you have to be prepared for work. The preparation part, practice like you play, or whatever kind of a slogan you want to use there. Toughness, being tough, not just physically, but mentally. I mean, getting through things. There were some practices, my junior year, especially being on scout defense, and our offense, the guys that were on offense were phenomenal. And going against those guys was not easy, being on scout defense. And there was some days, and I had coaches that were trying to push me. And I realized when I get older, they were trying to help me, push you to be better. And there were some days where I was like, do you see who I'm going against? These guys are monsters. Well, you're telling me I got to get in there? Are you nuts, Mr. Short? Who's a great guy. I'm not saying anything. I have nothing but good things to say about Mr. Short. But it taught me that about pushing yourself, beyond what you think you're capable of. Like you think you're at your breaking point or something, but there's something left in the tank. You got to be mentally and physically tough, And I would say that would be a big part of it too. Um, Sticking to something, you set a goal, and like trying to finish that goal. That would be another one. But I would say another kind of hidden one that I take away from that, and I coach youth football now, try to tell these kids the same thing, is being honest with yourself. Whereas, there's a lot of kids out there that might get upset if they don't have the playing time that they think they should have. And that's universal. Every kid's going to think that. You could play every down. My older boy played every position when we had him in youth football. If he came out the field for one play, he'd like lose his mind because he'd like, why am I you're not being punished. You're just off the field for a play, But being honest with yourself of, if I'm not playing, what is the reason I'm not playing? Be honest, look in the mirror, self-reflect. Like, are you putting enough time in the weight room? Are you maybe in as good a shape before the season starts as you should be? Cardiovascularly speaking, things like that. Like I say, self-reflection, being honest. Why am I not achieving this goal? It's not because of the coaches. It's not because of this. It's not because of that. What is it that I'm doing or not doing that is keeping me from achieving that goal? If you know what I mean. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And two things you really hit on is the mentally tough part, especially scout team defense. You're going up against somebody you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really hard. And not only do you know you're going to lose, but you have to go as hard as you possibly can so that you can win on Friday night.
Yep.
Right. That takes a lot of mental toughness. That's a great point. And then I really like the being honest with yourself. And I see the same thing where a player is, I'm going to go to college. It's like, okay, dude, like you're 5'7", 120 pounds. I'm not saying you can't, just saying we need to be realistic, right? Yep. Be honest with yourself and
encourage them all day long.
Exactly.
But you got a lot you got to do yet before you get to that point.
Yep, without a doubt. And being honest with them, teaching them to be honest with themselves, I really, really like that. And then honest with parents too. And parents can be a tough one because there's a biological and an emotional attachment there.
Oh yeah.
So that's some tough navigating. So
yep.
Since we're segueing to that anyway, you are a parent now, not on the field cracking skulls, but you're actually up in the stands cheering them on. So what is that like, coming full circle from being a player to being in the stands as a fan cheering on your own son? Well,
as you know, there's different types of fans in the stand, right? There's a whole assortment. I'm fortunate to have, I played and I coached youth football and I have my own kid playing. So you get the whole, and being that parent. So you get the whole three-way dynamic of appreciating the game, plus watching it and loving it since I was a kid. So you hear other people, the things they yell and the things they say, and you just want to turn around and think, in God's name, are you watching the same game as me? And it's frustrating because then the coaches on the field are my friends. I work with these guys, and you got to bite your tongue a lot. Let's just put it that way, right? I'm trying to be polite when I say this, but at the same time, being somebody that, like I was saying, I have a tendency to self-reflect a lot, self-assess things like that. I feel the same way when I watch my own kid. So when I'm watching him, if I see a coach talking to my son, and I just watch his play, and if something didn't go right, my first thought is, okay, what did Charlie do? What did he? I know when he has a good play, but I have some people I sit by and I say, the coach is talking to Charlie, but my thought is, it's because he probably did something wrong. And then after the game, I will, you talk to the, hey, great game, you did a great job, did you have fun, and this kind of stuff like that, and then work into the conversation. So in the third quarter, when Coach Navarro was having a nice little talk with you. What was that all about? You know, were you talking about where you're going to go eat after the game? I doubt it, you know. But it's, you always want to help your kid, but being in the stands and not being able to control it as far as being able to help them, you know, like I say, when I coach them in youth football, I'm right there. So I can say Charlie this or Charlie that, right? But in the stands, I'm not going to scream down. I'm not one of those parents, I guess, put it that way, right? Like screaming as loud as I can, Charlie, you got to make your block, or Charlie, you got to do this. I keep my mouth shut as far as that goes. I guess I'm kind of more of a quiet fan, but it's stressful. You know, it is a stressful situation, but at the same time, proud. Watching your own kids achieve something it's awesome. And my youngest son now, I coach his youth football team with a couple guys too, and watching your child, achieve something, and you see how hard they work, because you can see it in their eyes, and a lot of people don't understand that. If they think a kid's not trying, or they're not trying their best, you don't know that. Watch that kid. They're trying so hard, and they want to succeed. They want to do their best, and to get mad at a kid that really rubs me the wrong way as a fan in the stands. There was probably only one time where I had to kind of turn around and say something to a guy who was about 2 seats behind me, and he was yelling, not at my kid, but yelling about a player on the field who I had in class. And I love these kids as their teacher, and the stuff he was saying, I finally had to turn around, and not proud of it, but something I won't repeat on your family friendly podcast, but I just kind of, he got me to my breaking point where I was just like, do you even know who that kid is? Do you know what you're talking about? So I'm fortunate to have not had my own son called out in the, like, what's with that number 77, but my wife would have went after him anyway, so I wouldn't have to worry.
So I know for me as a coach, I'm on the field most of the time, or I'm up in the box, but I'll see coming out of halftime, we come out of the field house and you're looking at the stands, and some nights they're just packed. There's just so many people and there's so much energy. And I know when my parents were sitting in the stands, they kind of had like a group that they all, not assigned seats, but they all kind of sat in the same spot every week to watch. Do you have something like that? Do you have a core group of people you kind of sit with?
Well, I have a lot of friends that come to the game, and I would obviously, sit with my friends when they're there. Not necessarily all of them having kids that play, and more of like my group of friends. But for home games, my mom or my father-in-law would come to the games. My dad, if he could, but they're not that an age where they can't really get really high up in the bleachers yet.
Sure.
I have I sit by my mom, and obviously my wife. So I guess that would be my core group. I can't ditch my mom. I don't want to get grounded, so
that's awesome.
And then if she or my dad needs help getting out of the bleachers. So but if it's an away game, they're they wouldn't make that trip usually, So I have a tendency to sit by people that I had, known for a long time, and people that you have a lot in common with. For example, Jacob Sari and Isaac Olson, those two boys were on our team all 4 years in youth football, know the parents well, and coached with Brian, Isaac's dad. And those would be kind of people like when my wife and I get there, it's like, oh, sit by those guys,
That's awesome.
Bryce Wenzel, another one, and just like the parents that I've known for a long time. So I have a tendency to sit by those guys. So
that's really cool. And you brought something else up before that I want to touch on, and that's, these kids as students. And for me, I love that too, because we see them as boys, right? As middle school boys.
Yep.
And then by the time they get up to junior, senior year, they come and they talk to you as young men. And yep. I'm sure you get the same thing where they come and they say, hey, what do you think about college? What do you think about the military? What do you think about this life choice I'm about to make? And they want your opinion on it. How does that feel?
Well, again, it's one of those things that's kind of a mix. It's the honor you feel that they would come to you and ask that advice is, you can't quantify that. You can't put it into words, that they would come to you, trust your opinion, your judgment is it's I'm not even sure what the word is. Honor is the only thing I can really think of, but the fact that they feel that trust in you to come and ask your opinion is, it's huge. And pressure, right? Because you want to say the right thing, but I mean, I don't know what mom and dad are saying. I don't know what mom and dad's feelings are about this. I don't know what their what maybe even a financial situation. There's a lot of things I'm not really aware of. But at the same time, it's the student's future. You know what I mean? It's not my future. It's not mom and dad's future. It's the student's future. So I have a tendency to tell it like it is. You know, I'll tell them. I say, well, what is the thing that you really feel like that you want to do? And any obstacle that's really in your way of doing that, you know, we can get through this, and your parents are going to help you do this. You know, they're not going to abandon you. You know, I always offer any help that I can offer for that. But also throw in, if it doesn't work out, you know, or if you get a little ways into this and it was not the right decision, it's okay. You know, I mean, a lot of people start their lives out and think they're not allowed to change their mind. They're not allowed to, you know, change what they're doing. If you're not happy, then you should, you know, change course, you know, do something different so your life is happy, you know. And that's one of the things that I try to push at them, you know. Maybe try to like list like pros and cons for each of the decisions they're trying to make, you know. That's another thing that I try to do. But mainly I think about, and I always try to put myself in their shoes. Like when I was somebody their age, I had a tendency to be too proud to ask for help, kind of like closed off in that way, which is not good. And I tell them that, I said, good for you for asking for help. I mean, I'm jealous. I wish I would have been like you when I was in school. But what would I have wanted an adult that I trusted? What would I have wanted them to say? How would I have wanted them to help me? And I guess that's how I respond to them. Not any disrespect to the parents and their decisions, but it's their child is coming to me, and it's like you're saying. I just said child like they're a child because we think of them as boys, right? But they're young men. You know, they're an adult at this point, so you got to treat them like an adult. You know.
Well, and that's a kind of thing, very similar, you know, very humbled is the word I use all the time. Like that you're going to ask, you know, I yelled at you because you weren't reading your Constitution, and yelled at you because you didn't make a block. And now you're asking me like this huge life decision. So very humbled. And I always kind of I think of myself as the role of kind of like the big brother, like the brother that was old enough that they moved out of the house before you really knew what was going on. You know, but I'll share my life experiences, which is kind of all I can do, and basically ask questions and listen and try to help them make up their own mind. But I'm very humbled when they come ask for advice.
It is. It's sounds kind of corny, but it's an emotional thing. It really touches you. And like you say, you're humble. It's like, me, you're asking me about this? Ooh. You know, and I like the fact that you say you kind of like help them to make their own decision. That's good too, you know. And because I think a lot of times they know what the answer is. They just need it kind of some sort of confirmation from somebody else that they're making the right, you know, decision.
Right. Somebody who's kind of detached, but they also trust, right? It's not mom and dad. But it's somebody that I trust, an adult figure who cares about me.
That's how I always say. It's like, I'm a little bit detached from, you know, I'm not mom or dad, I'm not a relative, but I'm somebody that, and this is between me and you, you know, I'm not going to go say anything. It's very private. And I like that you said older brother, even though I'm old enough to be their dad. So thank you for like slightly older brother.
Yeah. So one question I try to ask at the end of every Flivver flashback is, for the 8th graders just getting ready to start their journey into high school, or maybe that 9th grader who has just finished their first year of high school football, what advice do you have for them as they navigate the next 3 to 4 years?
All right. The easiest answer to that, and that's because it's the truth, is weight room. Get to know and love your weight room. It's not everything, all right, but it's huge. I mean, that lifting weights is such a big part of this sport, and being able to be strong enough. It's obviously mental and all that kind of stuff, doing knowing plays, but getting into that habit and that routine is huge. But the other thing is kind of like I said earlier about being honest with yourself. You know, look back at your season. If you have, now you have access to huddle and things like that, which is great. Charlie was just putting together some clips last night for his Instagram, and I saw him looking at him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I got to put that one in there." But then a little while later, it gets kind of quiet, and I saw him going, "I'm like, what's the matter, Charlie?" And he goes, "Well, this one wasn't very good at all." You know, but I've told him that since he's a little kid. You know, be honest with yourself about it. So, what if you had a really good season? You know, don't be content with that. You know, because there's other people now that are working hard, and you might find yourself with less plays because you're not keeping up. You know, if you want to be static, everybody else is climbing, right? So don't be content if you're, you know, the stud on the football team. Okay, be honest with the things that you maybe weren't that great at and work at that. Okay, and if you weren't getting, like I said before, if you weren't getting the playing time that you wanted, you've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to, you know, put in the time to get better at that, and ask your coach. I mean, I've never met him in my life, met a coach that wouldn't welcome a kid coming in saying, "Mr. Van Duzen, you know, I realized they didn't play very much last year, and I think a kid has a tendency to think they're not noticed at all."
Yeah.
You know, yeah, but Mr. Van Duzen, I didn't play very much, and you know, I really want to play more. What can, you know, could you give me a couple pointers? You know, and the coach might say something you don't want to hear.
Honesty, right?
Honesty, you know, the truth, you know, truth hurts, but it's like, well, you're going to need to be in better shape when season starts. That means I got to run more over the summer. You're a great kid. You know all the plays, but you just sometimes you're just overpowered. You just, you know, maybe you need to lift more weights. And if you don't like to lift weights, well, you're going to have to. So it's just looking back at your season and being honest with yourself. Where do you want to be? Simple goal setting, right? If this is what you want to be and you're here, what are the steps that you need to do to take to get there? And if you don't follow through with that, and the next year it's the same thing, you know, it's kind of on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You know, and but that's usually what I tell kids, you know, because they'll ask me, especially, you know, I had the 8th graders this year on our team. You know, once in a while, you know, some of the kids that were really good. Okay, that's great, but you know, you're moving on to high school. We had a kid a couple years ago, in 8th grade. He was phenomenal. He's a great kid, but he really didn't do anything to keep moving. He kind of stayed right where he was, and then he found himself less and less playing time unless you're in a state of constant, you know, self-improvement, or at least trying to, you know, you're going to find yourself not playing as much as you wanted to, I guess. So
there's and he was an Olympic shooter, rifle shooter. And he said, when I'm in second place, I work really hard to get to first place. And then when I'm in first place, I work even harder because I know how hard second place is working to try to beat me. And I kind of share that with the kids. And I'm glad you brought up the weight room as a football coach. There's two players on our JV team this year that last year as freshmen didn't play. They just didn't. But they found the weight room. They started loving the weight room, you know, and the weight room it's an extension of the locker room because you get the same players in there all the time, and then they start holding each other accountable. And both those players came out JV year and started both sides of the ball simply because they were stronger, they were faster, you know, they had grown up a little bit. And I really like the honesty part, and that doesn't just apply to football. You know, as these young players are going through high school, they're faced with a lot of decisions and what classes to take. Are they going to go to college? Are they going to join the military? Are they going to get a summer job? Can they do this summer job and play football and do this and do that? So just being honest with yourself and what you're physically and mentally capable of, and then continue to improve that. That's awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I want to say thank you very much for coming on, and I'll see you in the hallway.
Yeah, see you in about a half hour. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mr. C. And as always, I ask that you go down in the show notes. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube and ring that notification bell. You can also find us on Spotify. Wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you're following us there. Until next time, I'm Coach Van Dusen. Win in the classroom, win in the community, and win on the field.